Go. Okay, good morning. I think we can go ahead and begin. Ms. Tolles, Mr. Roberts, could we go ahead and start?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. So with that, I believe we have enough folks to get started. Welcome to the Saturday morning cartoon edition of Ways and Means. With that, I think we can have the staff go ahead and call the roll.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Assemblyman Frierson. Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Here.
Assemblyman Hafen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdy.
Here.
Assemblyman Levitt.
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Here.
Assemblywoman Peters. Assemblyman Roberts.
Here.
Assemblywoman Titus. Assemblywoman Tolles.
Here.
Assemblyman Watts.
Here.
Chair Carlton.
I am here. Thank you very much. Please mark the members present as they arrive. We are doing a lot of work between the second and the third floor. So here we go. So with that, just to give everyone sort of what the goal is for this morning, is we have the governor's office here for SB 424. We'll be calling them up first. And then we made commitments yesterday to 274, 310, 455, and 390. So we'll be working those next. And I want everyone to understand we need to keep it tight, get it done, move on. And then we have some budget bills to hear, and then we did add some other Senate bills on. But after those bills, we are going to get budget bills done and get a work session on budget bills done and get them to the floor so that we can resolve that, and then we can focus totally on the other policy bills from the Senate. So with that, I believe our first bill up will be SB 424. Welcome the governor's office. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to go first this morning. You should have seen the death glares I just got in the audience. I really appreciate everyone's patience.
Well, we know who signs our bills.
Yeah.
Okay, we understand how this
Thank
works.
you. So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Heather Korbulik. I'm the Policy Director for Governor Sisolak, and I'm pleased to be here today to present Senate Bill 424. As many of you know, COVID has exposed so many of our state's strengths and weaknesses, and while we have demonstrated an ability to respond to a public health crisis of significant magnitude, we've also done it with a very frail and in some cases non-existent essential public health infrastructure. Senate Bill 424, with the amendments, create a public health resource office in the governor's office to analyze the existing infrastructure for meeting Nevada's public health needs. It also adds a position in the Office of Minority Health and Equity in the Department of Health and Human Services. That person will be responsible for researching and making policy recommendations to the Public Health Resource Officer on strategies to address disparate health outcomes in the communities of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color that result in systemic racism and structures of racial discrimination, as well as health outcomes for rural communities and other underserved communities. The office will analyze the relationship between the people and the entities involved in the provisions of public health services, including local health authorities, provider of healthcare facilities, and nonprofit organizations. The role of this office is to identify and make recommendations to the governor and to the legislature concerning the state's unmet needs and opportunities to obtain federal or private funding or support public health services, and ways in which the state can improve coordination between providers of public health services and the delivery of those services. The fiscal appropriation for this bill is $176,79 in fiscal year 21-22, and then $222,799 in fiscal year 22 and 23. That will fund 2 non-classified employees in the governor's public health resource office. There's also an appropriation for $76,062 in fiscal year 21 and 22, and $98,511 in fiscal year 22-23 to support the health program specialist in the Office of Minority Health and Equity. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Korbulak. Committee members, any questions at this time? Dr. Titus, I was waiting for you to pipe up. I was giving you that moment.
I apologize, I didn't have my hand up quick enough, I apologize.
Oh, no.
Thank you, for bringing this bill forward. Just a question regarding the duties of this particular person, this resource officer. Are they going to be, one of the goals, besides just the information gathering, is you mentioned in your testimony, grant applications. Are they actually going to be looking at federal grants and applying for them, or what's their duty after that? What's their duty after they gather the information?
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair, to Assemblywoman Titus. Heather Korbulak for the record. So the goal of this position is to identify grant resource and opportunities across the country to bring to the state. And then that office would be responsible for working with whatever entity, whether it was Division of Public and Behavioral Health, to obtain those grants.
Follow-up, Madam Chair? So this is just a high-level office that is just going to look to see what's out there and then make sure that the individual offices, whether it's behavioral health or whether it's patient mortality, any of those offices that affect patient outcome and health in Nevada, for Nevadans, then they would reach out to those departments. Is there any accountability reporting back to this body or just to the governor?
Madam Chair, through you to Assemblywoman Titus, Heather Korbulak for the record. Thank you for that question, very important. The bill does specify that the Office of Public, or the Public Health Resource Office, will report back to the governor and the legislature on any of their findings or recommendations.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome. So this will be in coordination with the restructuring of the grants management office that's been done. So we'll be able to take those dollars, leverage them for even more dollars, and then have reporting back on how it actually worked.
Correct. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation this morning. Just to follow up on Assemblywoman Dr. Titus's question, is what I'm sure you've done some analysis. Let me say it. I can't talk either. And do you think if you estimated what your return on investment might be, is there a number of things that are out there that we believe that we're missing out on because we don't have this office? Do you think there's going to be some kind of return for this investment?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Through you to Assemblyman Roberts, Heather Korbulak for the record. I think that's a great question. The pandemic has highlighted some unmet needs throughout our state in investments in public health. While we were able to respond to this crisis, we did it with a really scrappy bunch that are totally burned out and ready for a rest, like you all. And so we have certainly identified areas in which we really need to improve those systems, and we think that this office, it's small, but will be mighty in terms of identifying those gaps, whether it's within the state infrastructure or how we communicate and work with and partner with our local health authorities across the state.
And thank you for the answer. I believe in looking for opportunities to obtain more federal funding or other private funding. And just want to make sure that this investment actually triples or quadruples the return that we're spending. So thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Anything else from any other committee members at this time? Ms. Thompson.
Thank you
And then
so
I'll go to Mr. Hafen.
Thank you so much. So for the section 1 sub 2 about appointing someone in this position who's knowledgeable, I guess when we talk about knowledgeable, are there certain types of educational backgrounds or degrees that you're going to be searching for?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. My name is Heather Korbulak, and yes, that's a great question. We intend to find an individual who has some public health background, or at least background in healthcare and healthcare systems throughout the state.
Thanks so much. So does that mean like a master's degree in public health? Because I remember like being in like social work school and you're like a social worker, but I remember that like with my friends who were at public health at the University of Michigan, they'd be like, well, we're public healthers, but like, you know what I mean? So like, are you looking for a public healther?
Thank you for the question. Can I go direct, Madam Chair? Is that okay with you? Thank you. Heather Corbulic, for the record, I think if we limit just to master's degree, we may find ourselves in a position that we are leaving out other individuals who might have very specific or wide berths of information or knowledge and skill sets. So I think we're really looking for someone who has a systematic approach and understands healthcare systems in Nevada specifically.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think it's a section 1.6, and are these the numbers in fiscal year 1 and 2? This is the salary, the benefit, and then all of the associated costs that come along with setting up the office. So this is a kind of a package number that we're seeing.
Heather Corbulic, for the record, that is correct. That includes setup and some travel for those individuals and their salaries.
Thank you very much. I believe Mr. Haven had a question, and then we need to get into the testimony part, or the opposition, support opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for bringing this forward. I know this last year we've really had some struggles, and so I hope that this will address that. And specifically in addressing that under Section 1.5 D, I just want to ensure, I know we struggled with reaching out to the communities that English wasn't their first language. So I just want, it doesn't really say that in there, but I think it's implying it. So I just want to make sure that the intent, the legislative intent's on the record, that is the intent here, is that, we want to make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind.
Thank you for the question. Heather Corbulic, for the record, that's absolutely the intent of the bill. I think the pandemic highlighted inequities and disparities, and we recognize that we as a state need to do a better job of making sure that we have systems to reach out to those individuals.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Corbulic. We'll go ahead and open it up. So with that, is there anyone in the room in support of SB 424? Seeing none, I don't see anyone on Zoom wishing to be recognized. Anyone on the phone line in support of SB 424?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 424, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers on the line in support.
Thank you. Anyone in opposition in the room? Seeing none, no one on Zoom. Any opposition on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 424, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. Anyone in neutral here in the room? Seeing none, no one on Zoom. Any neutral on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 424, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers on the line in neutral.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kerbulick, did you have any closing comments? None. She's going to pass on that. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 424. And with that, I believe we can go ahead and go back to the hearings that we owe folks. So we'll go ahead and go to SB 274 first. Give a moment to pull it out. Morning, Senator Ratty. We're spending a lot of mornings together here. It's working out well. There we go. So if you'd like to give us a high-level overview, we'll dive into the fiscal note. We'll go from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, Assembly Ways and Means. So happy to be back with you this morning to dive into complex health and human services policy again, hopefully without the earth shaking below our feet. So SB 274, I needed to take just a brief bit of history is important on this bill. So in 2019, in the 2019 legislative session, and many of you will remember this because you were here, we had another bill, SB 293. And what SB 293 did was we recognized an issue that many of us wanted to address, and that is right now, too many of our children victims of sex trafficking. So we're talking about people under the age of 18 who have been commercially sexually exploited. The acronym is CSEC, if I fall into the acronym, end up in the juvenile justice system, treated as offenders, rather than ending up in the welfare system, treated as victims, who can then go on to be survivors. And that was not something that I think many of us were comfortable with, and not necessarily serving those children in the best way possible. So I came forward, probably relatively naively, with a bill that said, we're just not going to do that anymore. We're going to get them out of the juvenile justice system. We're going to put them in the welfare system. It's going to be great. And it would have been wonderful if we could have just flipped a switch and that's how it would work. But the truth of the matter is the needs of this particular population are incredibly complex. Many are under significant influence of relatively sophisticated criminals. They've run away from home. And there were real safety reasons as to why, if you think about that moment in time when a law enforcement officer has interceded, now they have this child, and they are concerned that if they place that child into a typical foster care setting, that child is going to run, right? And so the choice that they had before them was the traditional foster care system or the juvenile justice system, where they would know at least that they were locked in, protected. And I want to give great credit to the juvenile justice system that has done a lot of work trying to meet the health and human services needs of children. So that was the choice that they had. And given that, I understand why that is the choice that we have made for a lot of time. So what we did in 2019 was we put a line in the sand, and we said that by 2 years from now, we are no longer going to do this. We provided the Division of Child and Family Services with a contractor to facilitate a working group and to bring forward some better solutions. And so that group worked through the interim. They did a national best practices search. They pulled together all the stakeholders to have good conversations about it. And they did come up with some concepts of how we could move this forward. The most significant concept is known as a receiving center. And so this would be a very specialized form of foster care that would have some lockdown elements to it. And what we would do then is we would avoid the re-traumatizing or traumatizing effects of having, again, a child who has been sexually exploited for commercial gain be re-traumatized by being treated as an offender, and then therefore would go into the child welfare system. So lots of hard work, because this is, while it's a small number of children, it's a lot of money per child, and this is the money committee, and we have to be serious about addressing that. And so we left 2019 with a pretty significant unfunded mandate for the local governments. We've been doing a lot of work with Washoe County and Clark County. And a lot of the work that has happened this session has been to rework this language so that we can make better access of some federal funds so that everybody would be more comfortable that they had some options. So maybe it's a receiving center, maybe there's an alternative placement that does work for that child. And so that is basically, there's a lot more technical into this. Like I said, I'd like to start Ways and Means in the morning with some complex health and human services policy. So there's a lot more to this, but the bottom line is this bill extends the timeline one more year. So by 2023, we will no longer be putting these children into the juvenile justice system. It gives the counties more flexibility and time. It gives them the right language that they need to be able to bring down federal funds. And there's a small fiscal note for the state. It's one contracted position still in the Division of Child and Family Services to be able to continue to do the facilitation and the stakeholder conversations that are necessary to continue to move us forward on what is going to affect, hopefully, not a large number of children, but for the children that are impacted will make a world of difference. And again, lots of credit to all the stakeholders, from juvenile justice to courts to nonprofits to counties to our own folks at Division of Child and Family Services, who have put a lot of time and energy, made this a labor of love to make sure that we do right by these children. And with that, I think it's just best that I open it for questions. And I do have from the agency, Ms. Roos, and then Bailey Borderland is hopping in and out from legal aid because she is also in Senate Finance this morning. Oh, she's right there.
Oh, here we go. Ms. Borland.
Bailey Borderland for the record. I'll just assist with questions should you have any.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, are there any questions? Mr. Levitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a little bit of experience with this. My mother ran the Southern Nevada Children's Home for many years, and then it moved on to Child Haven when that home closed. Is there any effort to maybe coordinate with those facilities, your St. Jude's Ranch, Child Haven, different places like that maybe have a group setting that, I know firsthand those people are very good people and really love and care for those children. And I just wondered if that was maybe part of the plan.
Thank you for the question, through you, Madam Chair, to you, Assemblyman. Yes, yes, and yes. A big piece of this, so they're saints and heroes. And this is really giving those entities another tool. And so what this allows is for agencies to get certified as a receiving center. And then that receiving center gives them some different tools in the toolkit, including the ability to have a locked setting that may be more necessary for a period of time in the particular children that we are serving. And please.
And Bailey Borderland for the record. To add to that, all of those entities were absolutely part of this working group, and we have been working with all of the stakeholders involved. And I think there is a true consensus that we just don't have the tools that we need yet to be able to handle this specialized population in the way that's most appropriate. And so when we talk about things like Child Haven, without this, they are really in a real catch-22 of, if you bring in this specific population, there's often a recruiting risk to the other kids that are in the home, and that often leads to our current reliance on the juvenile detention system. And so that's a huge factor as to how we've gotten to where we are. So they are definitely working with us towards this solution to be able to serve these kids better.
Thank you very much. Ms. Tolles.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll try and keep this short, and if it's all right, it's going to be a little bit more of a comment, but just to follow up on what you had just said, that really has been the main challenge, is that there is a multiplier effect here that is very difficult. You don't want to feed into the incarceration model, but you also don't want to put other youth at risk, and recruiting is how this system continues to thrive. And so I just want to get on the record that I think that this work, it's unfortunate we can't fully fund it in this session, but I do hope that keeping this moving forward towards the goal of getting it fully funded is a good one. And sorry, just more of a comment than a question. So I'll add, per the chair's advice, right?
No, correct.
Correct.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Correct. And I would add one thing. Some of it is about more dollars, and I don't want to be insensitive to the needs of the county, because some of it is absolutely about more dollars. Some of it is about shifting existing resources into a new model, and that's where we really need the time. So it's, how do we use the Title IV-B dollars from the federal government? Are there any savings that are coming from not having these children in the juvenile justice system? And where we really need the more funding is for both the juvenile justice population and for the child welfare population, and it is the wraparound services of behavioral health, job training. It is all of those other things. And so, if we had the Cadillac model, it wouldn't just be about the safety protection and the limited level of service that we are able to offer with our current funding. It would be about the continued investments that many people in this room have been fighting for in behavioral health services, job training and employment services, all of the things that help us transition from being victims to survivors. And so there could be an unlimited dollar amount, I think you might say, with this population and many of the folks that we're serving, but I feel confident.
Senator, using unlimited dollar amount in Ways and Means 2 days before we end,
Right,
I gotta
I-
warn you. But thank you for being honest.
Yes, so I want to say, we're confident that, and the counties are here and they can speak to it, we're confident that the bill that we've put together will allow us to transition to this system, and that we can start building these receiving centers and they have the flexibility for alternative placements, and we are going to do better by these children immediately, within that 1 year time frame. And then there's still more work for all of us to do for all of the children in Nevada.
And thank you very much, Senator Ratty. We appreciate that. Dr. Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Ratty, for all you've done and continue to do for Nevadans. Do we have, and maybe it's somewhere in here, I'm looking at the bill and the exhibits, do we have any idea on the numbers of children that have already been in this system? What I'm getting at is what's the problem? How many do we think we're going to affect by this?
Good morning, Chair Carlton, members of the committee. Joanna Jacob from Clark County. I can give you the numbers through you, Chair Carlton, to Assemblywoman Titus, and I don't know if Ms. Roos, who's on the Zoom, might be able to give you an idea about the children in the rural area, Chair Titus, but you'll see in our fiscal note that we have based our fiscal note from Clark County on the numbers that we've seen in consulting with our juvenile justice facility. We see, and we estimate that there could be as many as 100 to 150 kids who fall within this category in Clark County at any given time. I think those numbers, I don't want to speak for Washoe County, but we have worked with them, and I think those are somewhat similar, though a little bit fewer probably for Washoe County, and obviously I believe that we have the largest numbers, of course, in Clark County, just because by benefit of our economy and and our tourism and all of the things that go into this complicated situation. So those are our numbers that we've seen, and that's really from working with our juvenile justice system. And I just don't want you to think that we're not seeing these kids already, but we're seeing them through our work with Metro and with juvenile justice. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, because on these fiscal notes, it didn't really, for me, I was trying to kind of peel out where they were coming from and the math that was being done. Thank you.
So if I understand correctly, Senator Ratty, I'm going to go through some of my notes that I'm looking at Clark County as their unsolicited fiscal note was about 1.4 million in 23 for staffing, housing, and infrastructure. But when I look at that, I have to look at the other side of the equation, that law enforcement will not be spending money in certain areas. So it's kind of it's a balancing act. The dollars that will not be spent on one side will be spent on the other side. I don't know if Clark County wants to say that or not, but we know how expensive it is putting people through the system rather than giving them treatment.
So I'll speak, because I do want to speak statewide just a little bit. That was our starting assumption, and there is some truth to that, but it is not a full offset. And when you think about the juvenile justice system in particular, and the numbers that we're talking about here, 112 kids is too many kids, or 100 and some kids is too many kids, but relative to the entire juvenile justice population, it's a relatively small percentage. And in the juvenile justice population, you still have to have that facility, you still have to have that bed, you still have to have all those staff, so it's not by just plucking this child here and putting it over here that you get the 100% savings from that, because of all the built-in sort of indirect costs that go along with our juvenile justice system. For the law enforcement piece, we need their cooperation to do something different, right? And so right now, it's actually probably easier just to do a juvenile justice placement, because that's the path that they're accustomed to using for all juveniles that they're coming into contact with that may be coming into contact with the law enforcement for some reason. And now they need to get trained and to be able to understand how that they can do a placement. And these placements, and this is part of the reason for the expense, have to be more of a 24/7 model, right? You can't wait until 8 a.m. to be able to do this placement if you pick up this child at 1 a.m. So yes, there are some savings, but also there are some additional challenges for law enforcement in particular, and making sure that we have a 24/7 model that can be the receiving end.
And thank you for putting, it's not a full offset, but there is going to be some dollars from one budget going to another just to address the issue. So, Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Carlton. Yeah, that was the challenge when we worked on the original version of the bill. It is not a one-to-one offset. Juvenile justice, we have to keep it open, and it's there, right? It's a hard cost for Clark County. The model that we are trying to work towards is to have a receiving center that would be open 24 hours, 7 days a week. It has to be because it has to be available. And that's really, but I do want to point out the important work that we did in the amendment to the bill. And I think I would point this out to particular Assemblywoman Miller, because you sponsored the bill on children's advocacy centers this session, and that I know all the members of the Assembly have voted on that bill, but we are, when you speak to Metro, we are partnering with Metro already through our work on our Children's Advocacy Center, which is a forensic model. You can bring kids who maybe have a traumatic experience, and we have forensic interviewing. They go through the system one time. That is a model that we do partner with Metro, and there's a lot of work yet to be done, but we're looking at that Children's Advocacy Center as one that is appropriate for this model because it's less intensive. You're not sitting in a police station, but we have all the tools we need to make sure that the services are there. And then the idea would be, Chair Carlton, I know, to move if we can then move this population into an appropriate, that's why we wrote in alternative care settings, to Assemblyman Levitt's point, is that depending on the needs, it's really an individual need and assessment for each case, and we'll have to house them at some point. You'll see in our fiscal note that we do contemplate, based on what we've seen already, is that some of the CSEC youth might be able to be returned to a different jurisdiction, but we still think that we might have to house them at some point. So that's, I'm maybe babbling a little bit. I apologize. I've been waiting to talk about this bill, I know, and we've done a lot of work on it. But I think that what our goal is for Clark County is, we know, and we really do appreciate Senator Ratty pushing that date out for us for another year, because the housing costs that you noted, Chair Carlton, and the staffing, it gives us some time. We are actually, if we do need to do a tenant improvement for Child Haven or something on our campus to make sure that we have a different facility and a set-aside, really particular facility for this population, that we have the time and we're building it into our next budget so that we can make sure that we're ready for July 1st, 2023, and we will be.
And thank you all very much. And I know we sometimes get distracted and want to get into the policy because we're very interested in it, but we do need to try to keep our focus towards the fiscal. But thank you for the explanation. It makes us realize what that receiving center really will try to accomplish and how it will impact the counties. But then again, we don't fund the counties, so we have to keep that in the back of our minds too. Majority Leader, and then Mr. Haven, and then we'll need to move on.
Thank you
And
so
Mr.
much.
Roberts too.
Okay, so looking at the two fiscal notes, I think what I see and what you actually just touched on, Ms. Jacobs, was it looks like Washoe County and Clark County are planning new builds and have dollars in here. Like when I see the housing cost, I think I see it on Washoe in the first year, the building and operations costs, like specifically. So I guess, is this assuming like a new brick and mortar, or is it assuming additions to existing remodifications to existing brick and mortar? Or I see the piece in there too about allowing nonprofits or other groups to do it as well. So that, would that be dollars then sub-granted out for their kind of hard cost?
Thank you for the question. Is Amber Howell from Washoe County on the Zoom?
Yes, I am.
So Amber Howell is the Director of Health and Human Services for Washoe County, and I think she's best positioned to answer how they're approaching it. I will just add, we put in the amendment some flexibility of or other appropriate placement. Because if we can build a model that doesn't require all that investment, that also makes sense. So the flexibility and the ability to draw down the Title IV-B dollars was very important to that. And then Ms. Howell.
Amber Howell, for the record, AMBERHOWELL, through to Chair Carlton. What we did, it's really two things that have to be built. One is a receiving center, which I think we all agreed we're going to change the name to something a little bit more attractive than that name. That's really the 72-hour assessment intake, getting them stabilized, safe, figuring out what's going on. We're looking at a couple of different things. We would never want to start building a building from the ground up, right? There's a lot of unutilized buildings in Washoe County that maybe the state has or a nonprofit, or that we could purchase and do some soft construction. So the startup cost is to locate a building to do that. And then the other side of the equation is the placement costs. So we have to find specialized foster homes to take this population. And so there's a payment that goes with that. And I know a lot of you know that foster care in and of itself is very expensive. It goes up to about $700 a day or a month per child. And when you have this population, there's a couple of other facets that you have to consider: security, specialized training, and so you have placement costs. So there's really two pieces of the model that we had to contemplate. The building, though, is a one-shot. So that's not something that we have to reconcile year after year. And then, of course, the staffing, the specialized staffing. So that's what really came into the fiscal note. Changing the language to allow Title IV-E had a significant impact for us to draw down the amount of money that we would need simply by putting Title IV-E language in there.
Thank you very much, Ms. Howell. So with that, was there another question? Mr. Roberts, did you still have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is maybe more for Clark County to weigh in. So, we operate, or as stated before, we operate a facility over off of Bonanza, and we have police officers there. I had several detectives there. It worked in conjunction with Child Haven. And then we also worked so that we could steer people towards resources. We have the harbors, right? We have the two harbors. We converted a police station that we had. It was in mothballs into a harbor so that you could bring juveniles so they could connect directly with services so that they wouldn't enter into the juvenile justice system. I see this is kind of geared towards victims of crimes and things like that. It was so successful, we opened a second harbor, and police officers know to take kids there before we enter them into the juvenile justice system, and so that we treat them differently. My question is, how do you see that this works with the harbor? Is this facility after the harbor, or is this, and then how does it dive into what we're doing already? We had a significant footprint down there. I think I had at least a squad and a half and a sergeant and a lieutenant assigned down there just to work with the advocates and ensure that a lot of these services were being done. What's the difference here? What do we see different, what we're doing, and what's the difference here?
Thank you, Chair Carlton, through you to Assemblyman Roberts, and thank you for acknowledging the work that we've done. We've actually spent a lot of time, and you know this very well. And I think touching on the harbors, that is a program through our Juvenile Justice Division, and one that we are working to expand. But I want everybody to know that our Juvenile Justice Division and our department, Clark County Department of Family Services, which is our child welfare system, we work very closely together all the time. So I don't want to speculate here, but when we've talked about the CSEC population, we are working with juvenile justice and child welfare together. So the idea would be to try and intervene wherever possible, right? So if there is a child who comes to the harbor system and that we believe could be a victim of commercial sexual exploitation, then the idea would be a warm handoff right into the child welfare system. And that's something that I think is contemplated by the mandate that is, that Senator Rowdy had mentioned, that they would not be referred into, the work for the harbor is to keep them out of the juvenile justice system, right? And so then we would be handing them off and tying them to services that we would be building through this through the commercial sexual exploitation program. I think that really when we thought about this, when Ms. Howell noted the additional language and the things that we worked on in this bill, it's kind of just handing it off into the system for a best interest of the child standard, right? So we would look and see where we could hand them off, whether it's into a receiving center or another form of placement, or if appropriate, into a specialized foster care home that Ms. Howell had noted. So I think I see it as a step I see it as a cog in the overall system that we are building in Clark County. And I don't think that juvenile justice will probably still be part of our working group and part of this whole system that is going to address this population. I don't know if that answers your question.
I'm trying to figure out if, obviously this is something that the county supports and it's a move in the right direction.
Thank you, Chair Carlton. Yes, we were neutral on the bill in the Senate when we were working on our amendments, but this is something that we know is coming, and we actually do support the amendment to the bill, and thank Senator Rowdy for giving us this flexibility and working with us in legal aid as well, to working with us on the bill. So yes, this is a move. The mandate is in the bill, actually, that we are doing this move anyway, and so we are, and it is the right thing to do.
And that was kind of my thought, is I thought we were doing a lot of that already, why I didn't understand the physical notes so much. I guess that's the next iteration. But thank you for the answer, and thank you for bringing a bill forward.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Just very pointedly, the law as it currently stands requires it to start on July 2022. This gives them another year. So if the bill doesn't pass, it doesn't give them the new language that allows to draw down the flexible funds. It doesn't give them the new flexibility language about appropriate placement, and it starts immediately. So without the bill's passage, they're left with what we put in statute last time, which this is a significant improvement from where we were last session.
With that, Mr. Haven, did you still have a question? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. So seeing no other questions at this time, we'll go ahead and open it up for support, opposition, and neutral. So is there anyone in the room in support of SB 274?
Chair Carlton, Joanna Jacob for Clark County. I know I've been on the microphone quite a bit. We are in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering the questions also. Ms. Bordelin?
Bailey Bordelin, Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. We too want to thank all the stakeholders for everything we've been doing on this for the last couple of years, and we are very excited to see this fundamental shift for these kids, so thank you.
Thank you.
Tess Opperman on behalf of the Nevada Women's Lobby. I'll keep my comments brief because I know this is a fiscal committee, but we do appreciate the work on this bill and we urge your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room in support? Anyone on Zoom in support? Not
Amber
seeing-
Howell from Washoe County in support.
Thank you very much, Ms. Howell. So with that, we'll go to Broadcast Services. Is there anyone on the phone line in support?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 274, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have one caller in. Caller with the last 3 digits, 318. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Carlton and members of the committee. This is Kendra Birchie, BERTSCHY, with the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. My office represents the juvenile who are involved in the juvenile justice system. We've been involved in these conversations and appreciate Senator Rowdy and Ms. Bordelin for bringing forward this bill, and I'll just ditto the statements that were made as to the importance of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in support on the phone line?
Chair, that was our last caller in support.
I did see someone pop up on Zoom. Mr. Gonzalez, were you in support of this bill, or were you just tuning in for another bill?
I apologize, ma'am. Yes, I was tuning in for SB 185.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I didn't skip you. So we've now completed support. We'll go to opposition. Is there any opposition in the room? Seeing none, is there any opposition on Zoom? Seeing no one pop up, we'll go to broadcast services. Anyone in opposition on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 274, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there's no one on the line to testify in opposition.
Thank you very much. We'll go to neutral. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing none. Anyone in neutral on Zoom?
Good afternoon, Catherine Roos, Deputy Administrator at the Division of Child and Family Services. I'm here in neutral today to confirm that the fiscal note by the Division of Child and Family Services will be paid for with two sources of federal funding: Victims of Crime Act funding, VOCA funding, and then Child Welfare 4B2 funding. So this will have no general fund impact.
Thank you very much. That's nice to hear. Thank you. So with that, seeing no one else on Zoom, I'll go to broadcast services. Anyone in broadcast services on neutral?
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 274, please slowly state, wow, pardon me. To testify in neutral on SB 274, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there's no one on the line in neutral to testify at this time.
And thank you very much, broadcast services. I have the feeling we're all going to be a little tongue-tied between now and midnight on Monday night. So thank you. So with that, I think we've accomplished our mission on this. No closing comments necessary. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 274. And we'll go to, I don't see Ms. Neal. Senator Neal is on her way. So we'll go to SB 310 next as soon as she gets here. And my goal this morning, committee, is to get through the folks we had held over before we leave the room this morning so that they don't have to wait any longer. So we're trying to get through those today, this morning. I'll take one. Thank you, Bet. Good morning, Senator. How are you? Welcome back to the Ways and Means Room. Nice to see you. We'll go ahead and open up the hearing on SB 310.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, and thank you for waiting for me. I was in a interesting commerce and labor hearing. No, you saved me. You saved me, because you really did, because I probably would have got kicked out of the building for my next set of comments. All right. Okay, so first of all, I want to start off saying thank you to my colleagues for allowing MV Grow to be where it is. It came out in 2015, and we have managed to grow in such significant ways, and this is the appropriation bill. Right now, we're up to 358 businesses. We've created 522 jobs. Our capital formation is roughly about 18 million. We have a revenue impact of 17 million. And so for the $929 that we'll spend on a business, whether or not it's for payment processing, Google optimization, simply trying to get their website up, give them business strategy in order to move to the next level, we have been able to produce a $52,000 impact per business. I don't know if you guys were able to get that PowerPoint because, everything is just moving in such a weird way. But we had a PowerPoint that just kind of laid out our growth over the years. In 2020, we were at 326. In 2019, we were at roughly 210 businesses, and we've grown. And in that time, last session, we added the Asian Development Chamber, which then gave us an additional chamber who then was feeding businesses into Nevada Grow that we could move to the next level. We've expanded our staffing where we have a couple more. I think we roughly have, they're about 10, but then there's some part-time folks that weave in and out of the program. We have a unique organic growth that's kind of happening in the space. We have he actually is an employee at CSN who created a clothing line called Unconquered, and he now has been able to get sell one set of clothing to, I would say, I'm saying this wrong, but he's been able to get with vendors, and he was able to get off one line of clothing, and now he's moving into a second line. It's been interesting how Nevada Grow, being housed at CSN, has organically created opportunities of entrepreneurship, not just for the businesses that we have, but for the staff that may be considering businesses who then work with our program coordinator, Kevin Rayford, and then we're able to launch. The interesting thing of the CSN employee who has a clothing line, because I asked all kinds of questions. I mean, he's selling to a vegan population. I don't know what that means. Like, I'm like, so there's particular kind of clothing. It's made out of like potato, but that is his niche, right? And so it's like, okay. So, but he is also involved in the program where he is helping us do podcasts. So when the pandemic hit, man, we ended up helping a lot of our businesses go to the e-commerce model. And so we started to pivot and extend the dollars in a different way where now businesses were trying to sell online. So for example, we have Chef Sonia Inawal. She has the Rooster Boy Cafe and she sells granola. And so her biggest shift or the goal that's currently happening for her is to get her to sell her granola online. And so because she was a brick and mortar, the pandemic made us move into a space where at CSN they have like a little room. I'm calling it like a little computer room, but really it's a TV and it has speakers and it has all of these things where we can go in and like help them build their YouTube commercials. So we've expanded in such significant ways that it's hard for me to really put it all in one bucket, but I believe we've been really good stewards with the money that the state has given us and this committee gave us last session and the sessions prior to that, and we've managed to grow. We even leveraged our money to move into grants. So there was a grant that came up from Nancy Brune. It was last October. Well, it was before the pandemic, and there was an application, it was called Sandy, where they came to us through, believe it or not, Assemblywoman Bustamante Adams and connected Nancy Brune to Nevada Grow. And then they said, we want to write Nevada Grow into our grant. And so we were able to get 1 million to spend over 3 years. It hasn't been distributed to us yet, but it's an example of how Nevada Grow from 2015, where I was, sitting there monitoring the humans at CSN and what they were doing and having quarterly meetings and saying, where's the money? Show me the money. How did you spend the money? Let's see the production of this money, and how we have managed to be where we are, where other people want to step in and help us and go to a level where we can take the 400,000 and go beyond, because now we're dealing with entrepreneurs. I only wanted to deal with second stage businesses, meaning you were already in play, we needed to move you to the next level. But now entrepreneurs are coming to us and saying, help us get from that beginning stage and then pivot us all the way up to a $300,000 margin. And so that's my quick synopsis about what we're doing, where we're going. We didn't get a chance to have too many quarterly meetings during the pandemic. We're having one right after, where I will further get into the details of every dollar that's being spent, but I just wanted to let this committee know that I have tried to manage the little bit that we got, but it was a lot. For us, it's a lot. I can do a lot with a little. So in 2 years, we made magic. We've made magic with the 350 that we got, and so I'm here again to hope and pray that I get another allocation so we can continue to grow Grow. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Senator. We've talked about this one for a long time, so it's really nice to hear that it's working. I guess I have one quick question, though. You're focusing on a lot of businesses. I'm from the nonprofit side of the world, and there's a lot of nonprofits that could use something like this, or just benefit from some of the advice that some of your folks in business might have. Is there an opportunity for them to reach out to you, or are they prohibited, or is it more of just a resource issue for you to be able to help those folks?
So, Dina Neal, for the record, they're not prohibited. We've had the door open for them. They just have to come to us.
Okay.
We don't say, hey, nonprofit, go away. So we're okay.
No, that's good to know, because I do know some small ones that are doing fantastic work, and they just don't have that expertise in-house to figure out how to make those next steps, because it's not as easy as you would think it would be. Because you could grow to the point where you could be crushed, so you have to take small steps. So with that, are there other questions, Mr. Hafen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator, thank you for bringing this forward today. I think this is a great cause. And I was looking at the slideshow, and I'm sure the chair is very appreciative of you not going through the slideshow today. But it appears on slide 6 that the expense that you're showing here is about $36,000, and the economic impact is $2 million. Which is a pretty substantial return on investment. And so with this additional $400,000, are you anticipating a return on investment similar?
Dina Neal, for the record, thank you for that. Yes, because part of that $400,000 is staffing that's in there as well. So for our Kevin Rayford, who's our program manager, he gets paid $42,000. We have Pablo Rea, which is the very important part of this conversation, because he is the one that gets in the data. He's the one that's a part of our ESRI. So there's ESRI, and then there's another data set that we use that CSN has. And so when we talk about, we spend half of the money on the businesses and the other half on the employees. And so when you think about the setup of the bill, it allows stipends for the professors on campus to engage. So we use the culinary, which is on CSN's campus. We use the business professors, and then we have that relationship with SBDC counselors that then merges into all of this. And so it's not just this set of humans, it's like this collaboration of individuals that come together where we merge their skill sets to then produce and leverage for the businesses. So like Michelle Kwan, she's an SBDC counselor, but we have her because, I think 2 sessions ago, we went into, we needed a person who spoke Mandarin, right? And then we had a student intern who then spoke Mandarin. And then so we started to move off of that. And now we're into African communities. And we were always in Latino communities, but now we're getting into the subset of like Tagala, and we have a person who speaks Tagala. So our money is spent in a way where we use it in a way to not only bring in the right kind of personnel to affect those relationships, to be able to communicate to those businesses. So if a business said that they wanted to do something in a bilingual way, we have that capacity, because we not only have a counselor who can speak to them about their business component in their language, and that has been very important for us to help us grow. And so the other part of it has been, a small amount of operations, but the rest of it is on business and how we leverage them to the next level. I don't see us changing. I just see us getting better in terms of how we focus and do more direct targeting.
Okay, thank you. I have Mr. Levitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this. I've worked with a couple of projects with you in workforce development. Let me rephrase. I've worked for you on a couple of workforce development projects, what I found that you were able to do was bring a lot of entities together, and I wonder if this is the same. If your trade unions, your municipalities come to the table and really step up and help organize and give input. Does this operate kind of the same way as the other stuff that you were working on?
Thank you for the question, Senator Dina Neal. Slightly. I mean, my workforce development program 354 was slightly different. I had a different goal and agenda, but the local government doesn't play a role as much as the chambers play a role. Like Clark County Business Licensing had a role, but they have been more of like when we need like help with a business license or going through that process, that it's more of that kind of relationship. But with the unions, we have not had that kind of relationship unless they came to us saying that they were a second stage business that wanted to grow to the next level. So if they came to us saying, I just started my transportation company, or I just started my machinery company or something, and they came to us, then that would be our relationship to them, because we don't have a category of who we work with. We just have the category that you be a small business under 50 persons and that you have a certain revenue, gross revenue that you're actually earning, which allows us to take on the smaller business, because if you're under 50,000, then you're that small business entrepreneur. But if you're over 50,000, then that allows us to kind of deal with that entity and say, all right, well, that's probably how much you were making when you left your job, right? And so now you're engaged in your business, and so that is the doorway where we try to reach them, because they've been in play. They have taxes to show that they had that gross revenue. But it's a collaboration of the chambers, CSN, and then the ecosystem that's going on at CSN.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any other questions. Oh, Ms. Benitez Thompson.
Thank you so much. I've voted for this bill a number of times in the appropriations and the policy, and I know it's been a struggle in different years to get this done. And but I've always thought that this is if the state is going to provide help when the state provides help to business, that this kind of the stage that these businesses are in is where it's the most meaningful. So oftentimes, and in past years, like when you were first fighting for this legislation, the focus was on so much on how do we help these highly profitable companies with supports and economic incentives, and it's like really there was a small group of people advocating for these smaller businesses who were just getting off the ground, and really in those first couple of years where they were going to make it or break it, right? They were going to kind of do well and survive, or they were going to lose all of their life savings that they'd put into everything. So I've always believed in this intersection and watching it grow. like looking at the legit website and everything and all the work that's come from over the years, this has worked out well. I really like it.
Dina Neal, for the record, thank you for that. We do have a YouTube channel and we have an Instagram. Just plugging that. But one of our, she's a Superb Maid company. She got the Small Business Award from SBA. Yeah, and so we have had super successes with our group. Like I think when in 2017, one of our businesses that, remember the group that had the backpacks that were like basketball backpacks, and they made these things. So they've grown in a way where now Santos, who was one of our first businesses, he's now going around educating and mentoring the other businesses. And then he's expanded in significant ways. Like if you actually go to his Instagram, he is traveling around the United States educating folks on how to get suppliers, get fabric, do different things, and then he brings that expertise right back into our ecosystem to help build the other businesses. And so that was one of the outliers that I was hoping to get to, because it was always in the bill that to do that internal mentoring business to business, because it's super important for a business to be able to tell you their mistakes and then the road that they traveled that were successes, so that you can follow their path to gain the same access to the information and material. And so it's been good. It's been interesting. I had a super hands-on in your business approach, and I could be a little less. I could be like over here, like instead of like right here. But and that's good, because that means that the effort that I did of super managing came to fruition, and now they can kind of run on their own without a legislator showing up in the building saying, can I see the last 3 quarters of expenses, and I hope you're not wasting this money.
Thank you very much, Senator. So with that, I don't see any other questions at this time. A number of us on this committee are very familiar with this program, and if I was going to give you a word of advice for the future, I would start talking to the guy across the mall and see if you can get it built into the budget, because I think you have proven the success over time. And you know, there's this conversation out there about small businesses. This really was a piece of legislation that has made a true difference for small businesses. So with that, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and open it up. Anyone else here in support of SB 310?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Marianna, Keown, Director of Government Affairs for the College of Southern Nevada. We too are very, very much in support of SB 310. We are very proud of Nevada Grow. We want to thank Senator Neal for her ongoing leadership and vision for this program. As many of you have mentioned, our website, we're very proud of our new website. I'll do a shameless plug for it, which is www.csn.edu/NBGrow for the people who are watching. Also here on behalf of our program manager and business professor, Mr. Kevin Rayford, he did share some data that the senator has also mentioned, which is that the businesses served as of the end of April of this year is 386. The jobs created is 529. The cost to service the business is about $929. And the economic impact per business is about $52,088. We are certainly looking forward to continuing to grow Nevada Grow, and agree with you, Madam Chair, in terms of future appropriations for this bill. And lastly, just want to thank you, Madam Chair and Majority Leader, for your service to our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the room in support? Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom in support? Not seeing anyone turning their cameras on. With that, I'll go to broadcast services. Anyone on the phone line in support, please?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 310, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 853. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Doug Unger, D-O-U-G-U-N-G-E-R, Southern Nevada Government Affairs, Nevada Faculty Alliance, representing the faculty of the College of Southern Nevada. We enthusiastically support SB 310. We believe that this is just the kind of public-private partnership that will encourage the diversification of the economy of Nevada. Faculty enthusiastically support it, and we thank Senator Neal for bringing the bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next caller in support.
Caller with the last three digits, 081. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair Carlton and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dylan Keith, D-Y-L-A-N, K-E-I-T-H, Policy Analyst with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is in strong support of SB 310. We would like to thank Senator Neal for bringing this bill forward once again. We're in strong support of the NV Grow program. In that average, it increases businesses' economic impact 50-fold per dollar invested. It's a great program, and we think it's an amazing use of the state's dollars, and we are in strong support, and we urge your support as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the phone line in support?
Caller with the last three digits, 182. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ariel Edwards, A-R-I-E-L-L-E-E-D-W-A-R-D-S, with the City of North Las Vegas. With small businesses being the core of our economy, Nevada Grow has had an impact of hundreds of small business owners and their families. Nevada Grow has provided direct consulting services to the small businesses within the City of North Las Vegas. So we believe that this program can be a game changer to individual families and will set them up for future success. So we would like to thank Senator Neal for bringing this bill forward, and we urge the support and passage of this measure. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Is there another caller on the line?
Chair, that was the last caller in support.
Thank you very much. So we'll go to, is there any opposition here in the room? Not seeing any opposition in the room. Is there anyone on Zoom? No one on Zoom. Broadcast services, is there any opposition on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 310, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition.
Thank you very much. So with that, we'll go to neutral. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing none. No one wishing to be recognized on Zoom. Broadcast services neutral on the phone line.
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 310, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in neutral on the line.
Thank you very much. Senator Neal, any closing comments? About 2 sentences worth. That's about it.
Going to be a good 2 sentences, Madam Chair. Senator Dina Neal, for the record. Thank you for hearing the bill. I think this will be I don't think I have anything else in here, but this will be my last time testifying in front of you and your awesomeness. So I want to say that thank you for mentoring and being a part of the space. And I do miss you guys. No offense to Senator Ratty. But I hope you have a great time outside of this building. Come back and see me.
Thank you. Okay, I think our next bill is we'll close the hearing on SB 310 and we'll open up the hearing on SB 390. Senator Ratty, I am sorry, I should have had you go back to back. I'm just working through my list. I apologize. So please go ahead.
I very much enjoyed watching Senator Neal present that bill, so thank you for the privilege. Senator Julia Ratty, for the record, representing Senate District 13. This too will be my last bill presentation for you. So last time you have to put up with some relatively complex Health and Human Services policy in Ways and Means in the morning. This is my third reprint bill. We all have to have our third reprint bill in the session, right? And I will say that it is a bill that a large cast of characters has rolled up their sleeves to make sure that we get it right. And I really do want to say that I am here representing the entire Senate Health and Human Services Committee because, in particular, Senator Kekeffer and Senator Spearman rolled up their sleeves and got involved to make sure that we got this right. There are two significant portions of this bill, and because there's some relative complexity to it, you have a cheat sheet that is an exhibit that goes through all of the sections. I want to avoid trying to do a section-by-section walkthrough, but this bill has a lot of fiscal implications to it because we are talking about 2 new funds that get created and the distribution of those funds. And so if there ever was a bill that I thought this committee might want to know in greater detail, hence the cheat sheets for you. So this bill is very much focused on behavioral health broadly. We have been doing a lot of work in the state of Nevada on that issue, and it has 2 separate and distinct components that are both in this bill because they relate to behavioral health and are both in this bill because they are in response to significant national events that we need to get our hands around here in Nevada. The first 6 sections of the bill are in relation to the federal decision to stand up the 988 phone line. And so on October 17th of 2020, so relatively late after many of us had our bill drafts well underway, the federal government passed the National Suicide Prevention Designation Act. This is an effort that behavioral health advocates have been working on literally for decades, and what it does is it stands up the 988 phone line. So you're all familiar with 911, dial 911, you get an operator who's going to say, is it police, fire, or a medical emergency? And we're going to dispatch to that. What we know is that despite all of the best efforts of law enforcement to do a significant amount of work on crisis intervention training, to work with their teams on how do we respond to somebody who's experiencing a behavioral health crisis, that I think that there's been a general consensus by both behavioral health advocates, law enforcement advocates, the community advocates at large, that law enforcement is often not the right response to somebody who is experiencing a behavioral health crisis. In the Health and Human Services Committee, we started to talk about the Crisis Now model, which includes 3 components. The phone line response, which is a call line where 90% of instances of somebody experiencing a behavioral health crisis can be stabilized. Followed, that crisis line needs to be able to dispatch, and it also needs to be able to organize follow-up services for those individuals. So they do stabilization for 90%, follow-up services, and dispatch. What they can dispatch is something known as a mobile crisis intervention team. And in the best practice model in Crisis Now, that team is comprised of a behavioral health professional and somebody with lived experience. So yesterday we heard the bill on the peer recovery support specialists. It would be somebody with lived experience and a behavioral health professional who are dispatched, and they can usually stabilize somewhere between 8 to 9%. And then the last leg of the 3-legged stool of the model is a crisis stabilization center, which is a living room model that diverts somebody who is experiencing a behavioral health crisis from either a hospital emergency room placement or a jail placement. Instead, they can go to this model. And we had another bill that you heard, SB 156, that created the licensing for those crisis stabilization centers. So this bill is the phone line portion of it. It lines up with 988, which is the national hotline. 988 will go live in July of 2020. Well, hold on, I don't want to get this wrong. It goes live July 16th, 2022, regardless of what we do. So we can either be ready for that to happen or not, and this bill seeks to have us be ready for that to happen. So what the first bill does, and it's the first page of the cheat sheet, is it allows the Board of Health to adopt regulations. The national legislation contemplated standing up the funding mechanism for this type of service through a surcharge on telephone lines, just like we do for 911. And so that national legislation authorizes that to happen. This bill authorizes the the State Board of Health to adopt regulations. They want to do a planning process. They currently have a grant to do the 988 implementation process. So they are working with stakeholders now. Many of the folks in our communities, from law enforcement, behavioral health, et cetera, are working with the Department of Health and Human Services and Dr. Woodard, who is leading that project, to start the work to stand up the 988 hotline through that grant. So then they take the learnings from that and they implement this 35, capped at no more than 35 cents. So we don't know what the rate's going to be because they need to build the plan to establish the appropriate rate, but it can be no higher than 35 cents per line. We've worked with the industry, specifically folks who, companies that have phone lines, to make sure that it's capped, that the money can't supplant, and that we're very tight on the definition of what the money can be used for. And the money can be used to stand up the 988 system and specifically make sure that we have the people to be able to do the phone lines and the wraparound response that would be necessary once these calls stop going to 911 and start going to 988. It'll be a slow ramp up, right? Just like 911, people will need to learn about this line right now. And it is connected to the National Suicide Hotline, which already exists. But right now, you have to know what that phone number is, right? Now, everybody will just be able to call 988 if they're having a behavioral health crisis. Over time, this is going to divert many people who are having a behavioral health crisis out of the EMS emergency response system and into a much more right tool for the job behavioral health crisis system. So that's the high level overview of 988. It creates a fund. That fund there's a planning grant to stand it up. One of the big questions is going to be interoperability between 911 and 988. And that doesn't have to happen on day one, because we already have between our existing suicide hotline, which is currently run by Crisis Services of Nevada. We already have the ability to toss folks back and forth, but we don't have full interoperability. So that would be the long-term vision. And there's work to do. And July 16th, 2022, that line will go live, and we want to be ready. So that's the first half of the bill. It is really about crisis stabilization, building out that new and better crisis stabilization response system, specifically the phone and mobile crisis teams funded by the surcharge in this model in conjunction with 988. So I'll just pause there because I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because then there's the rest of the bill. And the rest of the bill is also a very significant development in behavioral health services. And that is, there has been tremendous work. We had the luxury of more time on the other side, and we had Attorney General Ford with us to present an update on the opioid settlement process. And so I know many of you are familiar with the fact that we have had a devastating opioid epidemic in the state of Nevada and across the nation. And you are aware that there have been a series of important and significant actions led by Attorney General Ford to go after individuals and companies who knowingly contributed to this epidemic. And I have Jessica Adair with me, Chief of Staff for the Attorney General, to talk to you and be able to answer any of the questions that you have about the settlements. But what happened is they, not me, I had nothing to do with it, they have won their first case. And so we have the first opioid settlement dollars starting to come into the state. And we need a mechanism and a structure to catch those funds and make sure that those funds get used in an appropriate manner with appropriate budget controls and are applied to the actual impacts that have been experienced by the state of Nevada. There are two important components to that I just want to highlight. One was that the Department of Public Health, working with the Attorney General's office, did significant work to support the legal process. I never go to judiciary. I try really hard to stay in HHS. To support the legal process, to make sure that we could very clearly define what has been the impact of the opioid epidemic on the state of Nevada. And those settlements then include that those, at least to date and probably going forward, those monies need to be spent on addressing that impact. So a lot of work on the Department of Behavioral Health, collaborating with the Attorney General's office, and then the Attorney General's office has, of course, been aggressively pursuing those settlements. And so on this part, at the discretion of the chair, and again, we're talking billions with a B, will come in over a period of time. And so I do think it's important that we get this right. So I'm kind of looking to you, Chair Carlton, of how much detail you want me to go through on this part of the section. But I have Dr. Woodard and Ms. Adair here to help with answering those questions. What I will say is we are trying to do something that hasn't been done before, I think, in this state. This is built off the Fund for Healthy Nevada model, the tobacco settlement dollar model, with some tweaks. It's the Fund for a Resilient Nevada. It has an advisory committee. The advisory committee, we did a lot of work to make sure that, frankly, people who are impacted and communities that were impacted disproportionately had a voice at the table. And so the appointments are made by the Attorney General's office. A third of the appointments are made by the Attorney General's office. A third of the appointments are made by the Office of Minority Health to explicitly make sure that there are people of color in decision-making seats. And a third of the appointments are made by the Department of Health and Human Services. And within that, there is another call out that says that they have to be representative of the communities in Nevada. And that committee then has to go through a needs assessment process that includes significant outreach to all communities and a planning process that says exactly how they're going to use the money. Not exactly, not down to the dollar amount, because think of it as buckets, if you will. And then there's a list of services that the money can be spent on. And there is a distinct tie, a very explicit tie, thank you to Senator Kiekefer for his work on this, to make sure that the legislature was not abrogating their role in this, where it ties it to the budget, to comply with the State Budget Act and specific provisions for IFC. So I'm going to stop there. It's a lot. There's a cheat sheet, and ask for your guidance, Chair, on how much detail you want us to go into on all of that.
I don't think, I mean, some detail on the budget, the opioid settlement money dollars. I think the concern that I always have is when these dollars come in, we restrict them to the point where you never know where the need is going to be in the future. And if you get too restrictive, then you can't address something that comes forward. And Ms. Adair has been in this room numerous times this session where we've had conversations about, okay, this fund is beginning to transition out. There were positions associated with it. We didn't want to lose the positions. So I think it's very important that we create a record that as this fund moves forward and as these things happen, that it will operate within its own lane. It will be as some of the others. But we've had a number of other funds in the past where people found a hard time. It's like, we don't want to, once we get it, we don't want to let go. And when those dollars have been used, it will be time to close this fund up and move on. Now, at the rate that I see the money coming into this, I don't think that'll happen probably with most of us in this room. But I also want to make sure that we're not too restrictive in the uses, because when you talk about the consequences of opioid use, that could be homelessness, food insecurity, child welfare to the children that are involved. So I just want to make sure that these dollars are available for whatever issue arises out of this, because it's not just that one point. There's a cascade of events that follow that person with that substance abuse. It's not a single issue item. So I just wanted to make sure that was on the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is probably a place where you and I have a lot in common in terms of how we view the world. I want to explicitly point you in the bill to page 14. It's section 9.6, subsection 2. Starts with the statewide plan may allocate money to. And so I think it's probably helpful to just have this verbally on the record. There's a list there. Starts with what you would expect: expanding access to evidence-based prevention of substance use disorders, early intervention for persons at risk of a substance use disorder, treatment for substance use disorders, and support for persons in recovery. Programs to reduce the incidence and severity of neonatal abstinence syndrome. So specifically where substance use is affecting neonatal and birth, which we've talked a lot about this session. Prevention of adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, intervention for children who have been impacted because their parents may have been impacted by the opioid epidemic. Services to reduce the harm caused by substance use, which is a pretty broad category. Prevention and treatment of infectious diseases. So we know, of course, from the public health aspects that is a big part of it. Housing for persons who are services for children and other persons in behavioral health crisis, which ties it back to the work we've been doing on rebuilding our behavioral health crisis system. Housing for persons who are in recovery or have substance use disorders, which will be a significant part of our homeless population. Campaigns to educate and increase awareness of the public concerning, so our general prevention work. Programs for persons involved in the criminal justice or juvenile justice system. We know that in our own prison population and in our juvenile justice systems, there's tremendous impact from the opioid epidemic. Evaluation, because we want to know that we're doing well. Development of a workforce of providers. We know that we do not have the workforce that we need to address the needs in our community. And then collection of analysis and data, because again, we want to know that we're doing well. Capital projects relating to substance use disorder without limitation, construction, purchasing, and remodeling of buildings. Again, homeless population significantly impacted by opioid epidemic. And then implementing the hotline for persons who are considering suicide or other behavioral health crisis, which we just discussed. So that has to be tied to the part that I want Ms. Adair to speak to, which is the actual settlements themselves.
Okay. Ms. Adair.
Thank you, Chair. Jessica Adair for the record. I would be remiss if I didn't first acknowledge the thousands of hours of work that Senator Ratty, her staff, Second Assistant Christine Jones-Brady, Consumer Counsel Mark Kruger, and our unofficial opioid epidemic czar, Dr. Stephanie Woodward, put into this bill. The first iteration of this bill looked like many of the other committees that you have seen in this state, in which institutional players are making the decisions. And I want to specifically bring that up because I think that gets to your point, Chair, that when we spend money and the state agencies are driving that train, we tend to just stack our own agencies with people to address that problem because that's what we know how to do. This bill threw that reprint out, and we started from scratch. So the people who are driving the train on distributing this funding are affected communities. In that advisory committee, you will not see the institutional players. You will not even see the Attorney General himself sitting in that advisory committee. You will see people who have been communities who have been affected by this crisis and the people who work in those systems. So that advisory committee, logistically how this is going to work, is that advisory committee is going to develop recommendations. Those recommendations have a great number of statutory requirements that you'll see in the bill, and for brevity, I'm not going to go into that exactly, but emphasizing equity. Once those recommendations are made, those recommendations are then sent to the Department of Health and Human Services, and within the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Minority Health and Equity. With those recommendations, they also are going to look at a number of other factors that are in the bill, under sources of information that are in the bill. So those institutional players, those agencies who will have seen the harm that the opioid epidemic has wrought upon the state, the public hearings, public information gathering, and then other stakeholders and other community representatives and other committees created by this legislature who address these issues, including Assemblywoman Tolles' substance abuse response group. And with all that information, as well as the data that we're going to get out of the litigation itself, the department is then going to develop two deliverables. One is a needs assessment. What are we missing? What do we have but it's not quite working? And what are we doing really well? And once we have that needs assessment, they're going to develop a state plan to address those needs with this funding. And that state plan has to center equity it has to be evidence-based. It has to be strategic in thinking about how do we not supplant money, but how do we use this fund to leverage other types of funding, from private to federal to other grant funding. And with, again, input from the public, and then administered by the professionals at the Department of Health and Human Services who are very familiar with administering grant funding. And at the end of the day, all of this then goes to the Interim Finance Committee for approval, so the legislature then gets a say. And I think it's important to talk about those pieces because it gets at the question that you raised about how do we know this is going to the need, and how do we ensure that even though this is one-shot funding, it may come over a period of years, but we will only get one bite at this apple, so we have to do it right, and we have to make sure that the people who are affected by this crisis are the ones who are going to benefit from the funds from those who brought this destruction onto our state.
And there's one nuance that I think is important for folks to understand, and that is we're dealing with the settlements that were pursued by the Attorney General's office for the statewide impact. There is a whole another group of lawsuits going on that have been initiated by local governments, tribal organizations, you name it, and those dollars will not come through this process, obviously, because they are locally driven. However, there are some local areas that did not pursue lawsuits, and there are other areas, because every Nevadan is a person who lives in a neighborhood, that lives in a city, that lives in a county, that lives in a state, where the collaboration would be important for the state, the work that we're doing in the state, and the work that's going to get done at the local level. So what this bill says is it puts the exact same requirements on local governments if they want any of the statewide dollars to flow down to the local level or nonprofits. They have to do their own needs assessment, and they have to do their own plan, which we hope to nudge the collaboration between what is happening at the local level with settlement dollars and what's happening with the state level with settlement dollars. So if they want a penny of this to flow into that process, they have to go through the same steps.
Thank you very much. I think we've got a handle on it now. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for a couple of questions. Anyone have any questions? At this moment, there are the two different components. Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so in my question is section 3 at the beginning of the bill, and it talks about the funding on the surcharge for per line. And maybe you don't have this, maybe the division would have the answer to this, and it allows for the establishment of the response teams if funding is available. And I was curious to see, have they penciled that out to see what it's going to cost to stand up the center, and then, would there be enough to establish mobile crisis teams? I mean, do we think that we're going to be able to do that? Because, I mean, if you don't have people to respond, it certainly doesn't, it kind of hurts the center, and we've always struggled for that funding. So I'd be curious to see what we estimated that might be.
Thank you for the question, Julia Ratty, for the record. So the short answer is that's why there's a planning grant, and that's why there's no specific fee in the bill, but just a cap up to 35 cents, because the planning grant process is going to work through. We're also in a very exciting time where Senator Catherine Cortez Masto is doing some good work at the national level on this crisis response model. And we're seeing the ability to bill Medicaid for some of the components. And so that all needs to be sorted out to see what the local match piece needs to be, because this will likely be able to draw down significant federal dollars as well to support the model. So there isn't an answer for you that I think anybody's going to be able to give you at this time. The planning grant will get you to that. But a piece that I wanted to highlight for you, Assemblyman Roberts, if you're looking at page 4, line 21, those mobile crisis teams seek to develop this best practice model that includes the behavioral health professional and the person with lived experience, which is the first team, Team A. But it also recognizes that we have some good projects that are already working in our communities. So item B is a team established by a provider of emergency medical services. And we've seen some of the ambulance, in the north it's REMSA, I don't know what to call it in the south, I apologize. But I know in southern Nevada they have emergency responder models that have been working significantly on behavioral health. And then C, I think you'll recognize as the most teams. And so there's going to be need to be a triaging, if you will, of when do we need to roll a MOST team that does include law enforcement? When do we need to roll EMS because there's another issue? Or when do we need to actually build out these other teams? So there's a lot of work to blend the really good work that has happened over the course of the last several years on behavioral health with the MOST teams and the emergency response teams, and then this new model. And there's not a simple answer yet. That's why the planning grant.
Well, I thank you very much, and I appreciate the forward thinking of this. I mean, it's certainly a gap in our state and nationally. You know, the police are left to handle a lot of these issues, and they don't necessarily have the equipment or the training, or they're the appropriate folks to handle some of these. And so we've been trying to fill the gap. We've struggled with the funding, and hopefully this can get us there with the federal funding. So thank you.
So with that, any other questions at this time? Ms. Benitez Thompson, and then I'll go to Mr. Haven afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to start in the front part of the bill. So the national legislation, the U.S. Code on the National Suicide Prevention Line, that is launched and that is going. So that 988 process regulated by the FCC, that's kind of underway. Is that right?
Thank you for the question, Julia Ratty. For the record, yes, the line goes live July 16th, 2022, and it is underway.
Okay. And so then I guess, so the thing that is unique to Nevada for this, because I think as I'm reading the FCC documents here, they don't have an assessment on the telephone user, so that's going to be Nevada specific then, right?
So, correct, and I will read you the exact language in the national bill. A fee or charge collected under this subsection shall only be imposed, collected, and used to pay expenses that a state is expected to incur that are reasonably attributed to ensuring the efficient and effective routing of calls made to the 988 National Suicide Prevention and Mental Health Crisis Hotline and to an appropriate crisis center, personnel, and the provision of acute mental health, crisis outreach, and crisis stabilization services by
Thank
directly
you.
responding.
Sorry. Okay.
So it authorizes it
Yes,
to do
it
that
authorizes it.
specifically.
Okay. So having worked on a tele surcharge for deaf and hard of hearing, when we had, I don't want to misspeak, but we had the Supreme Court lawsuit about the deaf and hard and hearing, the TDD surcharge, because we passed a bill to raise that surcharge that was going to be collected, so it ended up in court, right? So having been through this, it says here that the State Board of Health will impose a surcharge. That surcharge will be based on regulations and then sufficient to support the uses as set forth in, I think it says subsection 2, but then I think it also makes a reference down to sections 2 through 6. So for the record, what would be your intent for what that would look like and those expenses to be captured? I guess what would be reasonable, so we kind of have an idea of where those regulations might land.
Appreciate the question. Again, Julia Ratty for the record. So the authorization from the federal government is there. It's a little bit distinct from 911 in that 911 is generally handled at the county level, and we've done some statewide things. The one that you've referenced also, the body cam legislation would be the other example.
Oh, sorry, I was referencing the TDD charge on phone lines for deaf and hard of hearing. So that was the one that Raggio put in place. And then when the aging and disability needed to raise that, I think the initial proposal was like, I'm going back to my 2015 session, by 2 cents or so, then it ended up in the uses for that 2 cents is what ended up in court. And I don't think the state initially prevailed, so we had to come back and redo our regs. So having been there before, I guess, on the intent for a good legislative record about those expenses that you would say are justifiable by the charge.
So the intent, as in the federal law, is very specific. The mental crisis hotline, an appropriate crisis center, personnel in the provisions of acute mental health, crisis outreach and stabilization services, and directly responding to the 988 National Suicide Prevention and Mental Health Crossline. So it'd have to be in that to be aligned with the federal legislation. And then in the bill, It is the sections, 3.2 and 4 that have the specific things that we're allowed to use the money for at the state level, cannot supplant. And then what I would say in terms of legislative intent and expectations is much of this is already existing. So, for instance, the Lifeline already exists, and we have Crisis Services of Nevada. But what will happen is as 988 becomes more well-known, there's no question that their trajectory of calls is going to go up because they're going to shift from 911 to 988. And so they're going to need that gap resource to be able to answer and respond to those calls. We're going to need the technology and the infrastructure around that to be able to respond to that. That would then flow into both the ability to do the case management and wraparound services for folks we never have to dispatch for, but we've had them on the phone line and need to make sure that they get an inpatient or an outpatient, an inpatient bed if they need it, an outpatient visit, medication, whatever that case management is to follow on with the wraparound, and or dispatching these teams. And those teams would be included, again, to the prior point. We have some of these teams already, so it's the delta that would need to be built out, and then flowing into that crisis stabilization center. And that will be the purpose of the 988 planning grant, is to really understand the needs assessment of where we are today and what the gap is going to be.
Thanks so much. I will say that just having spent the time, it was, I think, 2 years just fighting to get like a 2-cent increase on a TDD charge to support the deaf and hard and hearing centers and the work that they do. I don't want to pretend at all that rate and that charge isn't going to be a lift. And then once we got it, going back and them saying, nope, case services weren't clearly defined. And so you can't pay for case services with it. You can only pay for this with it. And then I think the biggest thing that we're going to have to be cautious about is the cost for existing services, because you do say not supplant. But the truth is, like, when we look at it for like the most team, we could triple that size of the program and still need more. We could quadruple the size of the program and still need more. But then what would that rate reflect like on all of everyone's phone bills and everything like that? Because with regulation, it doesn't seem like there's a cap in here to be established. So, I think that we got to be pretty clear about like that, what's in and what's out, and what specifically those we can see those dollars going for.
Thank you. Absolutely, that was a significant significant reason why we're on third reprint, is to get that very tight. Conversations with the industry, as you can imagine, who do just not want an unlimited number of dollars to be able to do all behavioral health across the state. And so therefore, tighter language on what it can be used for, no ability to supplant, and a cap. So it can be no higher than 35 cents. And that is in the bill. And for comparative perspective, I'm Julia Ratty for the record, I don't think I said that. We've seen other states going in the 40 cents to all the way up to $1.15 that they are proposing. I think we're being Nevada moderate.
So with that, I think Mr. Hafen had a question, unless it's been answered.
I did have a question. It has been answered, but if I may, I'd just like to thank the bill sponsor for bringing this forward. I think it's much needed, and I wish it wasn't, but I do believe it's much needed.
Okay. I don't see any other questions at this time. I think I just need one clarification. So I want to talk about 911 and 988. If someone calls 911, 911 is not going to tell them hang up and call 988. There will be a warm handoff when interoperability is available.
Senator Ratty, for the record. Dr. Woodard, would you like to talk a little bit about the current state of play here?
Very briefly, please.
Sure. Sure. Thank you for the question, Stephanie Woodard, for the record. Currently, there is some call exchange already between the National Suicide Prevention call line through Crisis Support Services of Nevada and 911. And so they're able to do that. However, we understand that the need for the interoperability really is there because it's a much less formal process, a lot less automatic than it needs to be. So that is absolutely the goal. We would not be having people hang up and dial a new number. We want these two systems to run parallel and be able to sync up with one another.
Thank you very much. I just think it's good that we have that on the record so folks understand exactly how this is going to proceed.
And I would say that it has to go, Julie, right, it has to go both ways, right? When the
Yes.
call line gets one that really should be a 911, they need to be able to go the other direction as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. So with that, Dr. Titus will be our last question, and then we'll move on from there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I much appreciate that you give me an opportunity. And sorry to be late to this hearing. I'm a big proponent of this. It's one of the national agendas for suicide. It's a national recommendation. I'm just wondering, and I'm sorry if it's already addressed, are there federal funds to offset this as it is a national priority? And if not, question number 2 is, we know that we absolutely know that there has been an increase in suicide during this COVID epidemic. And is there any thought to using some COVID funds to at least get this, as startup funds, based on the fact that COVID has had a impact on suicide in our state? And I'm sorry if that's already been answered.
Has not been asked, so please proceed.
Thank you for the question. It's a great question. Certainly sustainability of the program is something that I think is keeping us all up at night a little bit. Dr. Woodard, could you speak to the Medicaid reimbursement portions of it first?
Sure. Stephanie Woodard for the record. Thank you for the question. There's actually 2 components here that I want to be able to highlight. So Medicaid has been working, or CMS at the national level has been working very closely with SAMHSA and has committed to collectively providing technical assistance and guidance to states so that we understand how we can leverage Medicaid to make sure that we have some long-term sustainability built into our plan. That includes an 85% FMAP for mobile crisis services, and we are anticipating, as bills are rolling out at the federal level, that there will be continued push to make sure that states are in a position to really maximize Medicaid for some of that sustainability. In addition to that, I did also just want to mention that since the American Rescue Plan was passed, the state has received about $53 million in additional supplemental block grant funds, with the expressed desire from the federal government to use those dollars to be building the infrastructure and the seed money really that we need to be able to stand up the system. So that is exactly what we are intending to do with those dollars, including expanding access for all behavioral health services for children and adults throughout the state, but with a keen priority in helping to use those dollars to really build the infrastructure. So when we do need to go live July 16th of 2022, we've got a system that is ready to go. And that's the entire cascade of care that needs to come, not just the call center, but mobile crisis and crisis stabilization as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And then very important to add that Julia Reddy for the record, that the surcharge on the phone line would help us to get to the 15% that we would need to match those dollars, that 1585 match. And we've listed it in the opioid settlement dollars as an eligible use. So if there's a gap, and particularly capital, because of how that money is likely to come in, particularly thinking ahead for interoperability on 988 and 911, don't know if that's how it will play out, but we're trying to cover all of our bases to make sure that we're doing the Medicaid, we're doing the charge on the phone lines, and then it's on the list for opioid settlement dollars.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, thank you, Ms. Adair. We'll go ahead and open it up. Anyone else in the room here in support of SB 390? Mr. Musgrove.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dan Musgrove here representing myself, really. Madam Chair, since today's one of the days to be sentimental about your leaving this building, I just wanted to say a couple of things really quick. You know, I started in this building at the same time as the chair, and her and her partner in Commerce and Labor, Senator Townsend, they always worked on mental health issues way back then, and it was tough to get folks to respond back then. She's always been a leader, leaders such as Sheila Leslie. And now we have Senator Ratty, who's picked up the mantle of all the important bills that have to come before this body on mental health. I am the chair of the Children's Mental Health Consortium in Clark County. I'm also a member of the Clark Regional Health Policy Board. I've been working on mental health issues since my first session, whether it's for clients, whether it's when I was a local government lobbyist. And this system of care that we talk about in children's mental health, Dr. Woodard is being a leader of a system of care on the adult side. And you have to have all of these parts and parcels to go together. 988 is just one more spoke in the wheel. And it's so important that you have this opportunity for folks to get care and access and to put them in a position where they don't take the ultimate result of calling a suicide hotline, but you give them the handoff that they need to get care and help. And whether it's crisis now, crisis stabilization, all those front doors that we need for folks and first responders to get people help. I'm just really appreciative of the work that this legislature does and continues to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Musgrove. Ms. Adler.
Good morning, Sarah Adler, here as a member of NAMI Nevada's Policy Committee, and I would like to thank Mr. Musgrove for doing such a great job describing the behavioral health and substance use disorder stool and the work that so many have done to build the legs of that stool. So returning to SB 390, NAMI Nevada offers its support for both parts of 390. 988 can be life-saving. Despite consistent and dedicated work of law enforcement in our state, since 2015, nearly 1 in 3 of fatal police shootings in Nevada have been of individuals with mental illness. So standing up 988, which is going to happen, whether we engage with it or not, and the way that this bill proposes to engage will really save lives. To the second piece of the bill, that too is very exciting. I would just note that many people with substance use disorder have what we call co-occurring disorders as well. And co-occurring is not actually referenced in the second piece of the bill, but we hope through the needs assessment that will be discovered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Adler. Please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Joan Hall, representing Nevada Rural Hospital Partners. Passage of SB 390 will provide critical funding for needed crisis interventions for those individuals who are impacted by behavioral health crises or substance use disorders. These disorders impact not only that individual and their family, but entire communities in Nevada. We urge your passage of this and thank Senator Ratty for bringing this bill.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the room in support at this time? Seeing none, the folks on Zoom, were you here for backup or are you testifying in support?
Just here to, Christine Jones-Brady, here to answer questions if needed.
Thank you. And I wish I was where you are right now. I love the view. Thank you for bringing that view into the room. We really need it right now. With that, I will go to broadcast services. Would you please open up the phone line for those in support?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 390, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in support on the line.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in opposition in the room? Seeing no opposition in the room, is there anyone on Zoom? Not seeing anyone wishing to be recognized on Zoom. Broadcast services, anyone in opposition?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 390, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. We're going to keep ourselves on track and go right to neutral. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing no one on neutral. Anyone in neutral on Zoom? Seeing no one wishing to be recognized. Broadcast services neutral on the phone line.
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 390, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits, 500. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller 500, please press *6 to unmute.
Chair Carlton, members of the committee, my name is Helen Foley, and today I am representing T-Mobile as well as the rest of the telecom industry. While an industry is never happy about having a tax imposed on itself, we know that 988 is an extremely important issue, and all of our companies have been very strongly in support of that concept. We did have quite a bit of heartburn when the fee was open and there was no finite information about a cap or a set fee. We were able to work with the Senator Ratty, as well as Senator Keffer and Stephanie Woodard to come up with a cap of 35 cents. To give you an illustration of what that potential is, $380,000 per penny is what we estimate would be the tax. So if it was raised up to that maximum level, it would be $13.3 million annually. We know that there are opioid settlement dollars that will be available to this. We also know that money should not be supplanted that are currently funding existing programs. And so we also were able to get in a liability protection for the landlines and wireless companies. We think this is a very good piece of legislation, and we're happy with the outcome. So thank you again, Senator Ratty, and all those that were involved in this. And we are here, and we will do our part.
Thank you, Ms. Foley. Anyone else on the line in neutral?
Chair, that was the last caller in neutral.
Thank you very much. Are there any closing comments? Senator, did you want to make any closing comments? I don't think so. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. We can go ahead and close the hearing on SB 390. And then I have one last bill that I owe from yesterday, and it's the chair's intent to do that bill. And then we have two bills that we need our tax team up here for. I'd like to get their work done this morning so that if anything comes up that they need to deal with later on, we don't have to worry about having a conflict with the tax team. So we'll go ahead and open up the hearing on Senator Canizaro's bill, SB 455. And committee members, just so that everyone knows, we'll be working on SB 416 next, and then 441, and that will be our morning agenda. And then we'll get back in the room as soon as we can after floors, depending upon how everything rolls. So just everyone knows what the plan is for this morning. Good morning, Majority Leader. Please proceed. We'll open up the hearing on your bill.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Happy Saturday. For the record, I am Nicole Canizaro. I represent Senate District 6 in the northwest portion of the Las Vegas Valley, and I'm pleased to be here today to present for your consideration Senate Bill 455, which revises the qualifications to perform computed tomography and fluoroscopy. During the 2019 legislative session, Nevada legislators worked diligently with the radiological technologists and their legislative advocates to pass Senate Bill 130, which passed the Senate by a unanimous vote of 21-0 and the Assembly by a vote of 40-0 to 1. We believe that this measure addressed the issues that had been raised regarding the training and licensing of these medical professionals. Unfortunately, when it came to promulgating the regulations, we found that due to wording in the bill, these radiological technicians are restricted from receiving the license needed in order to practice fluoroscopy, which is part of their work. Senate Bill 455 will rectify that situation once hopefully adopted by this legislature. With your permission, Chair Carlton, I would like to turn the presentation over to Chad Hensley for his testimony, as he is an expert on this measure and on the profession of radiological technology, and I believe that he is joining us via Zoom.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator. Please proceed.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Carlton and members of the Ways and Means Committee.
I am Chad Hensley, representing the Nevada Society of Radiologic Technologists, and on behalf of all radiologic technologists in Nevada, I appreciate you hearing this emergency legislation today, and I would like to thank Majority Leader Canizaro for her remarks and introduction on this measure. In 2019, SB 130 was passed, creating licensing requirements for those who operate medical imaging equipment that use ionizing radiation, such as X-ray and computed tomography. This important legislation helped to protect patients by ensuring only properly educated personnel perform these medical imaging examinations. Unfortunately, earlier this month, we received two technical bulletins that are in Nellis from the Division of Public and Behavioral Health, indicating that individuals holding the radiology credential would not be able to engage in fluoroscopy based on a late amendment to the bill. The intent of the fluoroscopy amendment offered in 2019 was to allow radiation therapists, along with those credentialed in radiography, to engage in fluoroscopy. Rather, it inadvertently limited the provisions of fluoroscopy services to only radiation therapists. The impact of not allowing those credentialed in radiography to engage in fluoroscopy would have detrimental impacts to patient care in hospitals, imaging centers, surgical centers, pain clinics, and any other facility that currently rely on the assistance from the radiologic technologist in fluoroscopic examinations. This emergency legislation would correct this unintentional error and allow those who are properly trained in fluoroscopy to continue working within their scope of practice and provide high-quality patient care to those in Nevada. Lastly, this emergency legislation will better clarify under what parameters someone can perform computed tomography while still allowing for the evolution of the field. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Righty, thank you very much. Anyone else presenting, Senator?
No, Madam Chair, that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
And thank you very much. And we realize there is no fiscal note on this bill, but because Ways and Means can meet more often is the reason why we brought it here, because we saw it was an emergency measure. So we wanted to make sure that we could get it processed in the right amount of time. Trying to schedule multiple committee hearings gets a little crazy on the last couple of days. So committee members, are there any questions? I won't use the term true up. I've been told I use that too much. So this rectifies a situation that we need to take care of. Seeing no questions from any committee members at this time, thank you very much, Majority Leader, and thank you to the presenter. With that, we'll go ahead and open it up. Is there anyone in the room in support of SB 455? Please proceed.
Good morning again, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Joan Hall, representing Nevada Rural Hospital Partners. We appreciate you hearing this bill and urge your passage of it. It directly impacts access to diagnostic services in rural Nevada. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Seeing none. Anyone on Zoom wishing to testify in support? Not seeing anyone on Zoom. We'll go to broadcast services. Anyone on the phone line in support?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 455, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers on the line in support.
Thank you very much. We'll go to opposition. Any opposition in the room? Seeing none. Any opposition on Zoom? Seeing none. Any opposition on the phone line, please?
If you would like to testify in opposition on SB 455, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition on the line.
Okay, thank you. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing no one in neutral, no one in the Zoom being wishing to be recognized. Any neutral on the phone line, please?
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 455, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers on the line in neutral.
Thank you very much. So with that, Senator, if there are no closing remarks, thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. I'm glad the elevators worked today for you. Sure. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 455. We've fulfilled our commitment to these folks who've been so patient with us the last couple of days. We'll now go to SB 416. We have the tax folks available. So with that, if we could get, whoever would like to start, we'll open up the hearing on SB 416, and if you could give us a brief overview, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chair Carlton and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. We're here before you on SB 416, which is a one-shot appropriation of general funds for the replacement of computers, printers, software, hardware, and other various IT replacements. Section 1 of the bill appropriates $146,822 for the replacement of computer hardware and software. This will replace 89 computers that are in line with the state's computer replacement policy. Section 2 provides funding of $68,912 for the replacement of printers that will be past their useful life in the upcoming biennium. This would replace 26 printers. Section 3 provides funding for $259,743 to replace software and hardware, including servers, SQL servers, Microsoft Windows servers, data center, UPS battery supplies, projectors, and storage appliances. Section 4 provides for funding of $40,032 for replacement printers that are well past their useful life and should have been replaced in prior bienniums, and this would replace 27 printers. The total general fund one-shot request is $515,509, and this concludes our testimony, and we're available for questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Young. Committee members, are there any questions? All the numbers were pretty self-explanatory. We're buying the stuff we need to make sure that everybody can get their jobs done. So, not seeing any questions from any committee members at this time. We'll go ahead and open it up. Is there anyone in the room in support of SB 416? Seeing none. Anyone on Zoom in support? Seeing none. Anyone on broadcast services, anyone on the phone line in support?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 416, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers on the line in support.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to opposition. Any opposition in the room? Seeing none. No one on Zoom wishing to be recognized? I'll go to opposition on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 416, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no one on the line to testify in opposition.
Thank you very much. Anyone in the room in neutral on the bill? Seeing none. No one on Zoom wishing to be recognized. Broadcast services, anyone in neutral on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 416, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. I don't believe there's any closing comments that are necessary, so we'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 416, and we will open up the hearing on SB 441. Mr. Ginden, are you lead on this one today?
No, Madam Chair. For the record, Russell Ginden. I think Director Young was going to do this, and then I'm here if needed as your fiscal analysis division staff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ginden. Don't see you in Ways and Means often, so it's nice to see you. With that, I'll go to Director Young.
Thank you, Chair Carlton and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. We are here to present SB 441, which is incorporating the provisions regarding the retailer seller's permit found in NRS 372.374 and NRS 377 and placing them all in NRS 360. The bill has been amended from its original introduction. To provide the committee with some background, a sales and use tax permit is required for every business or person engaged in conducting business as a seller in Nevada. The seller's permit is issued to a business when they register with the department, and the permit is required for each business location. Currently, the fee is a one-time fee of $15. There are currently 97,194 businesses registered and issued seller's permits. Currently, the $15 fee is distributed 3 different ways. $5 goes to the general fund, $5 goes to the local school support tax and the distributive school account, and the remaining $5 is distributed to the counties through the basic city-county relief tax. While working through the language on SB 441, it came to our attention that some local ordinances that contain the seller's permit language in NRS 374 requiring certain amounts to be paid to the department for the seller's permit. So to avoid confusion, we discussed with your LCB staff options to better structure the seller's permit language. We came to this conclusion that a better way to structure the language is to include the language in NRS 360 and remove it from NRS 372, 374, and 377. The language in NRS 360 will include a current registration requirement for seller's permit and remain the $15 one-time permit fee. And the permit fee distribution will remain as the same as it currently is. This amendment would no longer require ordinances at the local governments pursuant to NRS 377, 377A, and NRS 377B, and any local acts to include provisions that would require the payment of a seller's permit fee to the department. The current amendment will also remove the language pertaining to renewing the permit, so the current one-time fee will remain. This amendment will have no fiscal impact to the state, schools, and local governments. This concludes my presentation, and we're available for questions.
Thank you very much. So, committee members, any questions for Director Young? Not seeing any questions at that time. Excellent explanation. We appreciate that. So, with that, Mr. Ginden, is there anything that you needed to add?
No, Madam Chair, I believe Director Young has established exactly what we're doing here with SB 441 and why we need to do the bill to clean up some technical issues that your staff working with taxation found this session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ginden. We appreciate that. So just a second. Alrighty, in taxation, Ms. Kaufman just informed me that you do have one more bill on our agenda for today, so it's the chair's intention that when we finish this one, we'll go ahead and take SB 437 so that we can have you in and out of here and let you do the rest of the work that you're supposed to be doing, even though it is Saturday, we understand. So with that, this is the hearing on SB 441. I'll go ahead and open it up. Is there anyone in the room in support of SB 441? Not seeing anyone in the room. Anyone on Zoom in support? Seeing no one wishing to be recognized. Broadcast services. Anyone on the phone line in support of SB 441?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 441, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in support on the line.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone in opposition in the room? Seeing none. Anyone in opposition on Zoom? Seeing none. Broadcast services, anyone in opposition on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 441, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers on the line in opposition.
Thank you very much. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing none. Anyone neutral on the Zoom? Seeing none. Are there any calls in neutral on the phone line, please?
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 441, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in neutral on the line.
Thank you very much. So with that, I don't believe any closing comments are needed. We'll close the hearing on SB 441, and we will go ahead and open up the hearing on SB 437.
Thank you, Chair Carlton and members of Ways and Means Committee. My name is Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. SB 437 before you today. When the Department of Taxation was faced with budgetary reductions, the executive team met and looked at alternatives to proposing budget cuts. Our budget is primarily funded with general fund dollars, and our largest expenditure is for personnel. In reviewing alternatives, SB 437, which proposes a fee increase on justice court actions or proceedings, was identified. Section 1 revises NRS 4.065 for the commencement of a justice court action or proceeding from $1 to $2. The funding is remitted quarterly to the department for the use of by the executive director to administer the provisions in NRS 360.283 and NRS 360.289. These statutory references outline the requirements of the state demographer relating to the determination of population, the certified population by the governor, and the apportionment of tax receipts, as well as the annual report of projected populations. The Justice Court fee was implemented in 1991 and has not changed in over 30 years. In determining the basis for proposing the fee adjustment, we looked at the actual costs incurred for the state demographer. To cover the cost of the state demographer's salary and directly associated operating expenditures, the fee would need to increase from $1 to $2. This would equate to an increase in revenue of $85,818 in fiscal year 2022 and fiscal years 2023. This concludes my presentation, and we're available for questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from any committee members at this time? Did I hear you say correctly, this fee has not been increased since 1991? Wow.
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director. For the record, that is correct.
That's a year after I moved to this state. Wow, okay. So with that, committee members, seeing no questions, thank you very much, Ms. Young. With that, we'll go ahead and open it up. Is there anyone in the room here in support of SB 437? Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom in support? Seeing none, broadcast services, is there anyone on the phone line in support of SB 437?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 437, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support on the line.
Thank you very much. So with that, anyone in opposition in the room? Seeing none, anyone in opposition on Zoom? Seeing none, anyone in opposition on the phone line, please?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 437, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition on the line.
Thank you very much. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing none, neutral on the Zoom? Seeing none, neutral on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 437, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in neutral on the line.
Thank you very much. I don't believe there are any closing comments needed at this time, so committee, hold on for just a moment. So we're going to go ahead and be in recess for a moment. We will be doing some more budget implementation bills just to make sure that we can get those processed this morning, but there'll be no other policy bills from the Senate that will be addressed. They'll be strictly budget implementation bills. So committee members, what we're going to do, because you never know what the rest of the day is going to look like, we do have, the majority leader has given us a little extra time this morning to get our budget implementation bills taken care of. Those are usually typically pretty quick and easy, very few conversations. Since we've already completed the budget, we've had thorough conversations about these issues. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Kaufman. And we will start with SB 417.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 417 appropriates general fund appropriations of $1,336,800 and authorizes expenditures of non-general funds in the amount of $203,533 for the implementation of statewide e-filing solutions for local trial courts. The bill also appropriates general fund appropriations of $1,290,292 for the implementation of statewide case management system in the trial court.
With that, Mr. Tuma, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is John McCormick. I'm the assistant.
Oh, Mr. McCormick, I am so sorry. I called you by the wrong name. I apologize.
Quite all right. It is that time of year. Chair. Anyways, John McCormick, Assistant Court Administrator at Supreme Court. This is basically a two-for-one, one-shot bill that funds the initial stage of a statewide e-filing system for all the trial courts, and additionally funds a new trial court case management system. We had spoken about this a little bit at our budget hearing. The current project we had for our statewide case management system has, the implementation has failed, so that will be heading to arbitration and subsequent legal proceedings. And so this second one shot is so we can resume that project with another vendor.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee members, any questions at this time? Not seeing any questions. With that, we can go ahead and open it up. Is there anyone in the room in support of SB 417? Not seeing anyone come forward. There's no one on Zoom. Broadcast services, anyone in support of SB 417 on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 417, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers on the line in support.
Thank you very much. Broadcast services, do we have anyone in opposition in the room? Seeing none, no opposition on Zoom. Any opposition on the phone line, please?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 417, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition.
Thank you very much. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing none. Anyone in neutral on Zoom? Seeing none. Anyone in neutral on the phone line, please?
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 417, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. I don't believe there are any closing comments needed, so we'll close the hearing on SB 417. And I believe we want to go to SB 437 next. Ms. Kaufman, is that correct? Oh, no, we didn't. That's not a budget implementation. Oh, that one's already been done. Thank you. So, the next bill that we'll do is Senate Bill 451, which is the Public Employees Benefits Plan Program bill. We can get that one taken care of. Ms. Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 451 establishes the state's monthly contribution amounts for health insurance benefits provided to active employees and retirees who retired participants in the Public Employment Benefits Program for the 2021-23 biennium. For active participants, state contributions towards the total amount, total monthly cost is $727 per month for fiscal year 2022 and $755 per month for fiscal year 2023. For retiree participants not eligible for Medicare, the base state monthly contribution is $471.50 for fiscal year 2022 and $498 in fiscal year 2023 for Medicare-eligible retiree participant enrolled in PEB-sponsored individual Medicare market exchange. The base state contribution is $13 per month for 15 years of state service, which equates to approximately $195 per month. And that concludes my summary of Senate Bill 451. I believe Laura Rich is available as well on Zoom.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kaufman. Ms. Rich, are you available on Zoom?
Sure. Laura Rich for the record.
Good morning. Did you have anything that you would like to add?
I do not have anything that I would like to add, but I am here for questions.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. So committee members have had a number of discussions about how PEB is funded and what's going on with PEB. So does anyone have any questions as it relates to the budget implementation bill of funding PEB? Not seeing anyone with any questions at this time. Thank you for being available, Ms. Rich. With that, this is the hearing for SB 451, so we'll go ahead and open it up. Do we have anyone in the room in support of SB 451? Seeing no one come forward. Anyone on Zoom in support? Seeing no one. Broadcast services, anyone in support? On the phone line.
If you would like to testify in support on SB 451, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone in opposition in the room? Good morning, Mr. Irvin. We typically wear jackets in this committee, but I'll let it go now. But next time I see you, I'd like to see you with a jacket on, please.
Thank you. Kent Irvin, Nevada Affected Alliance. Sorry, I left it in Reno this morning. Thank you, Chair and committee members, for your hard work and consideration. Of course, SB 451 needs to pass, but the PEB budget closed before Treasury guidance was issued on the American Rescue Plan funds, and some add-backs were made at that time, which we very much appreciate. But drastic benefits cuts compared with pre-pandemic plan remain for active employments. For active employees, monthly premiums are 45% higher. Maximum total out-of-pocket expenses for employees are 54% higher. Now $13,000 for a family on the base plan. That's a $4,000 increase for a family. To put this bill in context, the employer contribution was $783. That's in Section 1 of this bill in FY 2021, and now it's down to $727 for the coming fiscal year and $755 in FY 2023. It's too late to restore benefits for FY 2022 because open enrollment ends on Monday, although the long-term disability could still be added back. However, for FY 2023, there is still time to restore benefits using state or federal funds. The American Rescue Plan includes funds to restore budget cuts made due to revenue losses like the cuts to PEB. To fully restore PEB for 2023, the employer contribution should be increased to the pre-pandemic level from FY 2021, plus medical inflation trend of about 4%. Our written submission has details. State employees and their families have suffered from COVID, the COVID transformation of their work, and the COVID economy, with ample federal funds available to cover the revenue losses through 2023. State workers just do not understand why the state would not restore benefits and premiums for its employees. Whether or not SB 451, this bill, is the vehicle, please do so. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in opposition in the room? Seeing none, anyone in opposition on Zoom? Seeing none, anyone in opposition on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 451, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 853. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Doug Unger, D-O-U-G-U-N-G-E-R, Southern Nevada Government Affairs, Nevada Faculty Alliance. What SB 451 means for 44,000 state employees, non-Medicare retirees, and 70,000 covered lives. Premiums increase 44%, deductibles 17%, out-of-pocket maximums 28%, stripped-down plan designs that shift costs to the sickest and most vulnerable, life insurance cut in half, long-term disability insurance eliminated, tens of millions taken back from state contributions in a holiday by AB3 not yet restored, $2.7 billion in American Rescue Plan funds that guidelines by the U.S. Treasury permit filling budget holes exactly like the ones this legislature is choosing to leave open and deep, with no indication from state leaders that our funds might be used to restore the PEP budget in the future. What should we report to UNLV and CSN medical teams who work to exhaustion and risk their lives during this god-awful pandemic? What to say to the Southern Command police officers who reused N95 masks until they were rags? What to the dozens of teachers who contracted COVID-19, living now with long-haul effects? What do you tell your own hardworking LCB staff, the staff of PEB, workers in every agency who put in unpaid hours month after month to keep this government running? What do I tell UNLV faculty who work nights and weekends on emergency pivots, transitions, incident management teams, increased outreach to students to keep them from turning Zoom screens dark? One of my department colleagues who suffers from a long-term, costly health condition perhaps said it best, breaking down in tears in a WebEx meeting when she first saw these punishing cuts to PEB. Nobody cares. Don't let that be the message. Please restore the PEB budget from ARC funds. The money is there. Thank you.
Anyone in opposition on the phone line, please?
Chair, that was our last caller in opposition.
Thank you very much. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing none. Anyone on Zoom? Seeing none. Anyone in neutral on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 451, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on the bill and move on to the next one. So with that, committee members, we will go to SB 445, another budget implementation bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 445 prohibits a contract from requiring the filing of any action or arbitration of dispute that arises to be instituted or heard in another state or nation, or from requiring the state to indemnify another party against liability for damages. The bill removes an obsolete requirement relating to quotation formed in the content of advertisement. SB 445 requires the agency that directly purchases prescription drugs, pharmaceutical services, or medical supplies to maintain a public record of information. And finally, the bill increases the maximum amount of contracts that the clerk of the Board of Examiners can authorize from $50,000 to $100,000. I would note that the Senate amended this bill, removing a provision that would have otherwise removed the requirement that the Purchase Division publish an advertisement in the newspaper. Therefore, the division will continue to be required to publish advertisements in at least one newspaper in the state. Based on the base budget, it appears that the amendment creates an approximate $7,100 a year in expenditure liability that is not accounted for in the approved budget.
So with that, Ms. Kaufman, then, if the bill was to be moved, we would need to add the appropriation in, or did the Senate add the appropriation in?
Madam Chair, I believe we would need to amend this and add that $7,100 back into the budget.
Okay, so they amended it, but they didn't add the money back in. Okay, we now know.
I apologize. I think I misspoke. It was not general fund appropriation, so this would just be expenditures that the agency would have to absorb.
Oh, the agency would have to absorb it. Okay, all right. I was trying to figure out how all these pieces were going to fit together. So with that, I believe I have Mr. Tuma. Were you here to actually present on the bill, or just here to answer questions?
Madam Chair, I'm here to answer questions. I believe Administrator Doty is there in person to do the introduction.
Okay, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Carlton and members of the committee. I am Kevin Doty, Administrator, State Purchasing.
If you could speak up just a bit, please, and get a little closer. Thank you very much.
Sure. As already mentioned, SB 445 is a budget implementation bill that, thanks to the amendment in the Senate, no longer will be saving more than $7,000 a year. My understanding is that purchasing will be expected to come forward with work programs in fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 to put the money in the appropriate places. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Short, succinct, we get it. We understand how it's going. Understand where the Senate was coming from on this one. So with that, committee members, are there any questions at this time? Not seeing any questions. Thank you to everyone on Zoom to be here for backup. We appreciate that. So with that, this is the hearing on SB 445. I'll go ahead and open it up for those who are here in support in the room. Seeing none. Support on Zoom. Seeing none. Is there anyone in support on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 445, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers on the line in support.
Thank you very much. Anyone in opposition in the room? Seeing none. Seeing no opposition on Zoom wishing to be recognized. Anyone in opposition on the phone line, please?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 445, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing none. Neutral on the Zoom? Seeing none. Neutral on the phone line, please.
If you would like to testify neutral on SB 445, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there's no one on the line to testify in neutral.
Thank you very much. I don't believe any closing comments are warranted at this time. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 445. And Ms. Kaufman, the next bill, please.
The next bill is Senate Bill 449.
Thank you, Ms. Kaufman. Committee will consider Senate Bill 449. Ms. Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 449 transfers the duties to develop and administer the Outdoor Education and Recreation Grant Program from the Administrator of the Division of State Parks to the Administrator of the Division of Outdoor Recreation. This is a budget implementation bill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kaufman. This is the evolution of this new department that we have. So with that, who do we have to present? Good morning. Please introduce yourself and proceed. Love the background.
Good morning, Chair Carlton and members of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means. For the record, my name is Colin Robertson. I am the administrator of the new Nevada Division of Outdoor Recreation, NDOR. I appreciate the opportunity to provide very brief testimony in support of Senate Bill 449 today. In short, SB 449 transfers the duty and responsibilities of developing and administering the Outdoor Education and Recreation Grant Program from the Administrator of the Division of State Parks to the Administrator of the Division of Outdoor Recreation. The intent, mission, and purpose of the grant program and NDOR are very closely aligned. The change will yield administrative efficiencies in the Nevada Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and the budget as recommended by the governor and thus far approved by the legislature transfers the program's associated accounts and program manager position from the Division of State Parks to NDOR. SB 449 improves statutory clarity and helps effectuate program and administrative efficiency along with the budgetary reorganization. With that overview, I'm happy to answer any questions you and the committee may have, Chair Carlton. Thank you for this opportunity to present to you today. And I'd also like to say thank you very much for creating the runway for the Division of Outdoor Recreation that I have the opportunity to lead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're glad that the work is still continuing through the pandemic. And the one thing we really learned through this pandemic is people want to get outside. So we think this will be very, very important in the future. So with that, committee members, are there any questions of Mr. Robertson at this time? Not seeing any. This will be the hearing for SB 449. Always have to make sure I double check my numbers. So with that, I'll open it up. Is there anyone in the room in support of SB 449? Not seeing anyone. Anyone on Zoom? Not seeing anyone. Broadcast services. Anyone in support of SB 449?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 449, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers on the line in support.
Thank you very much. Is there any opposition in the room? Seeing none. No opposition on Zoom. Is there any opposition on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 449, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers on the line in opposition.
Thank you very much. Anyone in the room in neutral position? Seeing none. No one on Zoom, broadcast services. Anyone on the phone line in neutral, please?
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 449, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral on the line.
Thank you very much. I don't believe any closing comments are needed at this time. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 449. And Ms. Kaufman, I believe our next bill would be SB 457.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 457, as amended, temporarily increases the proportion of proceeds generated from the imposition of any license or registration fees or other charges regarding the general operation of a motor vehicle available for administration from 22% to 27% from July 1st, 2021 to July 30th, June 30th, 2026. This is a budget implementation bill as well.
Thank you very much, and I believe I see Ms. Butler on Zoom. Any comments, Ms. Butler?
Thank you, Chair Carlton. Julie Butler, for the record, Director, Nevada Department of Motor Vehicles. We are here in support of SB 457. Section 4.5 of the bill temporarily extends our historical cap from 22 to 27%. The practical effect of this legislation allows us to use a greater percentage of highway funds to fund our much needed DMV transformation project, as well as sustain our continuing operations throughout the 21 to 23 biennium. And as Ms. Kaufman said, the bill takes effect July 1st, 2021 and runs through 2026. And appreciate your time. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Butler. We appreciate the comments. So with that, committee members, are there any questions at this time? Seeing no questions, this is the hearing. Let me get, wait a minute. Give me just a second. I think I have the wrong bill with me. There we go. Got it. Just want to make sure I take the appropriate note. So this is the hearing for SB 457. I'll go ahead and open it up. Is there anyone in the room here in support of SB 457? Seeing none. Anyone on Zoom in support? Seeing none. Broadcast services, anyone on the phone line in support?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 457, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers on the line in support.
Thank you very much. Anyone in the room in opposition? Hearing no one in the room in opposition, no one on Zoom. Broadcast services, anyone in opposition on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 457, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers on the line in opposition.
Thank you very much. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing none. No one on Zoom. Anyone in neutral on the phone line, please?
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 457, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers on the line in neutral.
Thank you very much. I don't believe any other comments are needed at this time. We can go ahead and close the hearing on SB 457, and we can open up the hearing on SB 459. This is our authorizations bill, which the committee reviewed as the draft form before it went to the Senate and came back. So with that, Ms. Kaufman, SB 459, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you had indicated, Stephanie Day from our office had provided a thorough walkthrough of Senate Bill 459 on May 26, 2019. It provides funding and authorizes the expenditures of funding other than state general fund appropriations or state highway fund appropriations. The funding sources included in this bill relate to the federal funds, self-funded budgets that receive money through fees or other means outside of revenue sources such as licensing fees, gifts, grants, interagency transfers, and other funding sources, which total $28.11 billion over the 2021 biennium. This amount includes $2.83 billion in federal funding, inclusive of anticipated American Rescue Plan funds in the COVID-19 relief programs budget, and $1.36 billion in federal funding provided for pre-K education in response to the COVID pandemic. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So committee members, we did have a conversation about this. It was a couple of days ago, so it could feel like months ago at the rate we're going. So are there any questions from any committee members at this time on the authorizations bill? Not seeing any questions. This is the hearing for SB 459, so I'll go ahead and open it up. Is there anyone here in support of SB 459? Seeing no one in the room, no one on Zoom, broadcast services, anyone in support of SB 459?
If you would like to testify in support on SB 459, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support.
Thank you very much. With that, anyone in opposition in the room? Seeing none. No one on Zoom, broadcast services, anyone in opposition on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in opposition to SB 459, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. Anyone in neutral in the room? Seeing none. No one on Zoom, broadcast services, anyone in neutral on the phone line?
If you would like to testify in neutral on SB 459, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no one on the line in neutral.
Okay, with that, I don't believe there are any closing comments made. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 459, and we have gotten a lot of work done this morning, committee members. Hold for just a moment. All right, committee members, we have the PEB bill and the authorizations bill, which are very important to get to the floor to make sure that those do get completed. After that, I believe we will recess. We hope to get back in the room possibly late afternoon to be able to move some of the other budget bills and complete the other policy bills that are on our agenda today. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go into work session to move those two bills. Ms. Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As just previously indicated, Senate Bill 451 establishes the state monthly contribution amounts for health insurance benefits provided to active employees and retiree participants in the Public Employees Benefits Program for the 2021 to 2023 biennium. Laura Rich, the Director of Public Employees Benefits, presented this bill, and there are no recommended amendments.
Okay, so with that, are there any questions or comments from the committee at this time? We've heard a lot of conversation about this, but we know where we are at this moment in time and need to move forward. Not seeing any questions. So with that, the chair would accept a motion to do pass SB 451 from Vice Chair Monroe Moreno, second from Ms. Benitez Thompson. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes unanimously of those members present. Ms. Kaufman, if we could go ahead and go to SB 459, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 459 was just previously heard, provides funding and authorizes the expenditure of funding other than state general fund and highway fund appropriations, and there are no recommended amendments for this bill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kaufman. Committee members, are there any questions on our authorizations bill for this interim? Seeing none, I would go ahead and accept a motion to do pass from Vice Chair Monroe Moreno, second from Ms. Benitez Thompson. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Mr. Hafen is in opposition. Motion passes. With that, we'll report the bill to the floor. I believe committee members for this morning, we have gotten a lot done. So with that, we are going to go into recess. And as I said earlier, I do hope to get back into the committee sometime mid to late afternoon, but it's all relative at this point in time. So with that, thank you all committee members. We are in recess.